Hi, I'm Mason Marangella, aka the Rig Doctor from Vertex Effects, and today I'm here to tell you about 3 things that you need to do to ensure that your board is quiet, sounds just as good running through your pedal board as it would with your guitar plugged directly into your amplifier, and how to ensure that your board is absolutely reliable for years to come. Let's get into it. So there's 3 key things that I'm always looking for when I build a pedal board to ensure that I've done the proper job, that I've actually done something that's going to make the board as good as it can possibly be. So the 3 checks that I do is what I call the holy trinity of tone. And this is something that I'm going to be explaining to you today, not only what it is, but how to achieve it. So again, to refresh, the 3 basic pillars of what I'm calling the holy trinity of tone are, firstly, using high quality buffers. This means that you're using buffering in the proper places at the start and the end of the signal path so that you're ensuring that you're getting the highest quality sound and representing what's coming into the pedal board the same way that you're representing what's on the pedal board coming out of it, so that you're getting the same sound as your guitar plugged into the amp. We'll go through that a little bit more detail in just a moment. Secondly, the second pillar of the holy trinity of tone is using a high quality isolated power supply, preferably switch mode. This means that you're going to have the quietest, most isolated way to power all of your pedals so that you're going to get the optimal performance from them in terms of matching the proper voltages and current that is needed for most of your pedals, but in addition to that, not having any sensitivities to external environments or not having any sensitivities based on the proximity of where your pedals are put in relationship to your power supply. Again, we'll go into that in a little more detail in just a moment. And the third pillar of the holy trinity of tone is all about using high quality soldered connections. There are a lot of different cables out there, both soldered and solderless, and we're going to talk about why you need to go soldered and why you would want to choose that over a little bit more easy to assemble solderless version of maybe the same type of cable. Again, not anything wrong with the cable itself, but really focusing on the connection, and that really being a failure point for a lot of pedal boards that you can easily overcome by just following that step of learning to solder your patch cables or buying pre-made patch cables like the ones we sell over on therigdr.com. So let's get into the holy trinity of tone. I'm going to go through these 3 pillars in a little bit more detail, give you some great examples of all the different things that you could use, all the different materials that you could possibly buy, and we'll have links for all of this in the description so that you will know exactly where to find the things that we're talking about, whether that's something that we manufacture or other manufacturers that are making really high quality versions of some of these items that we recommend that you include on your pedal board to make it reliable, quiet, and have great tone. Let's get into those. So the first pillar of the holy trinity of tone is using high quality buffers. And if you've watched our channel at any length, you know that we talk about buffering all the time. I even sometimes get people complaining that we talk about buffers too much. And the reason why I do is that there is so much bad information out there about buffers or incomplete information about buffers. I really suggest, if you're interested in learning more about buffers, you check out some of our videos above that really get into the nitty-gritty of how to buffer and why you need one. I even have another video here which you can see how to make your own version of a high-quality buffer completely DIY and very inexpensively, and you'll also see links in the description of other high-quality buffers that I recommend. But the main essence of when we're talking about buffering in terms of the holy trinity of tone is making sure that you're buffering the input as well as the output. Now, why is this important to buffer in 2 places? Well, the reason is that that input buffer is designed to load the guitar pickups with the same loading that they're used to seeing if you were to plug your guitars directly into your amplifier. Almost every tube amplifier that you can think of is almost always going to be a 1 meg input impedance. So by having that on the input buffers, the first thing that your guitar plugs into, it's going to load those pickups so they believe that they're seeing the input of a regular tube amp, and in essence will act the same way and respond the same way as though you were plugged into that tube amp. Equally, on the output, the important part of having a buffer last is because we don't know about all the different specs of the pedals on the pedal board. Some of them can be as low as 100 ohms, although rarely, and most of them are more commonly 1K or above, which is not an ideal specification for driving long lines. Technically, the closer you are to 0 ohms on the output impedance, the better it's going to be at driving long lines. So there's certain buffers that I recommend in the description that are great at doing that. And the reason why you want to use a high quality output buffer is so that you're not dependent upon any pedal on the pedal board to have to drive that line all the way back to the amp. Because when you're turning pedals on and off, you maybe have multiple pedals on at one time. We just don't know what the different impedances of those are going to be. And this makes it so it doesn't matter what pedals are on. You always have a high quality buffer first, controlling that pickup loading, converting the signal to low impedance. You have a high quality buffer last that's going to drive that long line back to the amplifier. And it sort of creates what I call a hardware firewall for the entire pedal board, isolating the guitar from the pedal board and the pedal board from the amp impedance-wise by having those two buffers at the beginning and end. So first pillar of the Holy Trinity of Tone, using high quality buffers. That's going to ensure your guitar sounds the same as plugging right into the front of your amp. So let's go now to pillar number 2 of the Holy Trinity of Tone. With the second pillar, I recommend that everybody get a high quality isolated power supply. Now, if you're wondering what supplies are isolated, we have a great buyer's guide tutorial video where we talk about all the different types of power supplies and which one might be right for you. And you can check that out above and in the links below if you're curious to learn more about that. But the basics of a high quality isolated power supply, again, preferably switch mode, is that it's going to give every single pedal its own isolated output. So none of the pedals are going to be sharing any power, and they're all going to be quiet because they don't have any interaction with each other in terms of the power or in terms of the grounding. They all have their own individual outlets. They're not connected to each other. If you had daisy chained your pedals, for example, if one output goes down, you're going to lose everything that's connected to that particular output. This makes sure that they're all not only isolated in terms of their power, but they're also as quiet as they can possibly be. The other great thing about isolated power supplies is that it ensures that you don't have any issue with putting pedals near or on top of the power supply. With the linear power supplies of old, things like the old pedal powers from Voodoo Labs, those created some issues in terms of being able to put pedals in proximity to the power supply because of the magnetic leakage due to the transformer that's inside of them, either a C-core or an R-core or a toroidal style transformer. These can be problematic, especially with pedal train and other similar style pedal boards where you have the power supply mounted underneath the pedal board and then you're putting pedals directly on top of it. This can become a real problem in terms of pedals getting in the way of the magnetic field, that then bleeding into your signal path and having some static noise that really can't be mitigated or gotten rid of. You just have to live with it. By using a switch mode version of an isolated power supply, you no longer have to worry about where the pedals are in proximity to the power supply. You could use a pedal train style and put the power supply right underneath the pedals. You can put it on top of the pedal board if it's a flat style board. It's no longer important the location. It's going to work seamlessly no matter what. And the additional benefit of using a switch mode style power supply is that it can be used anywhere in the world. So if you're touring internationally, you're going to be going between Europe, United States, Japan, all of these different supplies that are switch mode will work in any of those environments. You don't need to use any sort of step up or step down transformer. You plug it right into the wall and it's going to work flawlessly every time and to deliver the voltage to the pedals that is required. So that is pillar number 2 of the Holy Trinity of Tone, using a high quality isolated power supply, again, preferably switch mode. And if you want to know more about power supplies, again, I recommend you check out our buyer's guide on which power supply might be right for you. Let's now get into pillar number 3 of the Holy Trinity of Tone. Now this one has been a little bit controversial in some of our videos, but it is none other than using high quality soldered cables. Now the cable in and of itself is not so critical on the pedal board, especially if you're using buffers. And if you want a good proof of that, you can check out our video where we shot out multiple different patch cables and then introduced a buffer with those same patch cables. And you can see that the differences in tone once the buffer is there is pretty nullified across the different brands. So really what it comes down to is which patch cable is easiest for you to work with and is easiest to solder. Now many of the solderless varieties of cables, the cable is actually perfectly fine, and if you wanted to use that to solder with, it would be a fine cable to do that, irrespective of whether it's a George L or an Evidence Audio or many of the different manufacturers of solderless connections. The cable is not the problem. It is the connection that is the problem and creates the reliability issue, which is one of the reasons why we mention it as one of the key tenets of the Holy Trinity of Tone. If you don't have a high quality connection that's connecting all of your pedals together, it's not going to lead to a successful, long-lived pedal board. And we want to make sure that when we're giving you advice about the things that are most critical to have a board that sounds great, that lasts a long time and is reliable, and is dead quiet, having high quality cables is an absolute must. Now the cable that I like to use, which is also chosen as one of the top cables in our patch cable shootouts, is the Mogami cable. And I really like the 2314, which is the same cables that we sell pre-made over on the rigdr.com if you're interested in having us make these for you. But equally, if you don't want to have ones made by us, we actually have a full tutorial also listed above here and in the description that shows you exactly how to make the patch cables the same exact way as the ones that we sell over on the rigdr.com. So if you don't want to buy them from us, you can make your own. I show you the exact same way that we do it for both the right angle and for the straight, so you know exactly the same technique, and you can utilize that on your own. But let's say, for example, that you already have invested heavily in a lot of solderless patch cables and you want to make that transition over to soldered. You could just as easily take your existing patch cables and convert them to soldered. For most of the patch cables out there, they will be just fine converting. I will give you a disclaimer that George-L's, although it's possible to make them soldered, it is quite difficult to do it. I've tried it many times and it's a little bit more difficult than just an ordinary Mogami. But if you do already have a bunch of solderless patch cables, you can definitely reuse them and just solder them. And this tutorial that we have will give you a pretty good sense of how to do that. We also have a second one showing how to do a more standard patch cable with a Mogami 2314, a little fatter diameter, which might be more akin to what you're using for your solderless patch cable. So you'll have two different examples of tutorials to use if you're interested in making your own. But what is the reason that this is important? Well, we talk about in a lot of our videos on this about the importance of a gas-tight connection. And solderless cables cannot offer that. They do not offer a gas-tight connection. They do have some susceptibility for cold flow, and although in some industries solderless connections can be used and in some cases are optimal, they're doing a completely different technique. They're using calibrated machinery that's calibrated weekly or monthly so that it can ensure that it's getting the same exact crimping every time. So this would be in some industries like automotive or aerospace. But those solderless connections are also happening in areas that are not of high use and are not in high vibration areas like you would have with your pedal board, say on a stage with the drummer next to you and all the pulsing sound vibrations and sound waves through the stage. They're not going to be in spaces like that, and most people couldn't afford those crimping tools or to keep them calibrated separately from the investment they have to make in the solderless cable and the solderless connection. The easiest workaround right now, based on the technology that's available for solderless connections, it is in no way superior to what a soldered connection offers. Soldered by far supersedes the quality of the connection, and if you like the cable of your favorite solderless cable manufacturer, please use it, but just make sure you solder it. That's going to ensure that your patch cables are going to be working for a long time to come, and that they're going to stay reliable, and that you're going to be able to depend on your board to work night in and night out without any disruption. Whether you're in a studio or on stage, you can know that you're going to get a high quality signal that's going to deliver from start to finish of your pedal board every single day of the week. So the third pillar of the holy trinity of tone is high quality soldered cables for all your patch cables, all of your instrument cables. You definitely want to do that. And if you're wondering how to do it, again, we have two great tutorials that show exactly our technique. And we also make pre-made versions that you can customize within an inch of whatever measurement that you have, and we can get those made for you over on the rigdr.com. So that was the holy trinity of tone. Again, the three pillars are: 1, using high quality buffers on the input and output; 2, using high quality switch mode isolated power supplies; and 3, using high quality soldered cables. You can use whatever cable you need, but you definitely want to solder that connection. And again, if you're not sure about how to do that, you can always check out our tutorials, or you can buy it directly from us on the rigdr.com. If you're wondering about high quality buffers or high quality power supplies, do check out our links in the description where we put plenty of recommendations. And if you like what you saw today, please do give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel so you can be up to date on all the new stuff that we're coming out with. Again, we're coming out with videos at least once or twice a week, so you can always stay up to date. And head over to the rigdr.com if you're interested in any of the pedal board tools or materials that we use, including our actual pedal board surfaces that we use for all of our rig builds. And head over to your favorite podcatcher if you want to check us out over on the Rig Doctor podcast, where we have all these different artist interviews, guest interviews with other rig builders, And we have lots of great tips that we go into much more depth in a longer form conversation over on the podcast, so do check that out. And if you're interested in supporting us further, we offer consulting services, and we have a Patreon page that you can check out in the description. And you can always head over to vertexeffects.com, the pedal company that I run, and you can support us by buying any one of the pedals that we sell over there on the website. That goes a long way in helping support this channel and making this sustainable for us to continue to do. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella, aka the Rig Doctor from Vertex Effects. Thanks for watching. See you later.